up, guys? Dakota here, and welcome back to the Driven Mad channel and to the R8. And in today's video, what we're going to do is talk about why I think the R8 is more relevant now than it has been in the past few years, because this car has a lot of things that people are looking for now in modern cars, and that's kind of what this is. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, so real quick, before I get too deep into details, what I kind of wanted to focus on at first is what do I mean by, people are looking for these days. So first thing is gated manual, right? Manual transmissions are going away. A lot of cars that are either holding their value really well or going up in value or just being sought after in general, not regardless of value, are a manual. People are obsessing over certain cars still having that. For example, a Porsche Cayman, still get it in a manual. The Lotus Emira, crazy hot car. 911 GT3, right? All these cars that people are just so, just clamoring to get a hold of because it either A, offers a manual or offers a naturally aspirated engine in the GT3 and in the Cayman GTS and GT4. And then for the Emira, a manual, mid-engined, non-$300,000+ car. Kind of see where I'm getting at here? And again, it's not just, oh, well, it could be any sports car. It's also the fact that it's mid-engined and it looks supercar, right? When you look at this car, it still looks good today. Arguably, I think it looks even better than a Cayman GTS and looks just as modern, if not more modern than a Cayman GTS. Interior-wise, it's fine, except for the head unit, but if you've been in a modern 718 Cayman GTS, it's been the same on the interior since 2017. And it only has a slightly larger screen. Now, it does have Apple CarPlay, but you can add that to this as well. This is a 2011, but yet when you drive it around, it doesn't look like that. And if we compare it to, say, something like a C8 Corvette, this is still a viable competitor, in my opinion, to a C8 Corvette. I've had one, so I kind of know. But again, so the main things are people are looking for naturally aspirated engines. This is a high-revving, naturally aspirated engine, just like how everyone's freaking out about the Corvette Z06 engine. It's right here. Over 8,000 RPM, naturally aspirated V8, pulls like hell, and a manual transmission. And not only that, but it's a fantastic driving experience as well. So what I figured we'd do is we'd go for a little drive, and I'd kind of talk about where I position this car and why I think it still should be competing with those vehicles that I named. So why do I still have that? Why do I have that impression that this car, if Audi made it today and just updated the infotainment system and changed nothing else, why do I think this car could compete with those cars? Pretty simple. Because, for example, compared to a C8 Corvette, this blows it out of the water in terms of handling and just a sound and a more charismatic engine and a manual, which isn't offered in the C8 at all. And again, being a previous C8 owner, the build quality in here is arguably just as good. There's no more squeaks or rattles in this 2011 than there was in my C8 Corvette. And from a handling point of view, the steering is much more engaging. It doesn't feel as diluted and as artificial. The interior, honestly, has more room. And from 60 onwards, this feels faster. Even though it has less horsepower and less torque, but it's also lighter by about 200 pounds. And you notice that because, again, from 60 onwards, this feels much faster. Whereas, obviously, 0 to 60, the Corvette with a dual clutch will be faster. But you could get a Gen 1 R8 with a dual clutch transmission. Oh, just listen to those downshifts. Oh. So, if you wanted to, you could get a 2013 and up to 2015, and you could get the dual clutch that was the same 7-speed dual clutch that ended up going into the Lamborghini Huracan in one of these. So if you don't want a manual, but you want a dual clutch, get this, and then you'll be on a much more level playing field with the likes of a PDK Cayman GTS or GT4 or a C8 Corvette with a dual clutch. But the benefit is you can get it in a manual. And it doesn't feel, this feels so much faster. I mentioned this in a few of my previous videos. This feels so much faster than a car with 420 horsepower should feel. A lot of that is down to the gearing and just the fact that it weighs about 3,400 pounds, which again is about 200 or so pounds lighter than the C8 Corvette, and it's probably about 300 to 400 pounds heavier than a Cayman. But you also get a V8 sound compared to the Cayman, and you get arguably a better looking car, because the downside of the Cayman is it handles fantastic. I mean, I've driven a GTS, I haven't driven a GT4, but I've driven a manual 718 Cayman GTS. The downside of the Cayman is no matter how you slice it, with very few exceptions, everyone views that car as you bought that because you couldn't afford a 911. Very few exceptions. Obviously the GT4, fantastic car, and the GT4 RS, totally different style of car. But for the most part, people will look at the Cayman and they know that's the base Cayman. When you buy an R8, people don't look at it and go, that's the base R8. Now, they might know that it's an older R8, but it still looks fantastic, right? Like, that'd be like hopping up to a Ford GT and being like, oh, you got the old one? Nobody does that. Compared to, say, something like a Lotus Emira, those are just almost impossible to get a hold of. I know, because before I bought this, I was looking at that car. I was looking at Cayman GTS, this, and a Lotus Emira. And a Lotus Emira I just could not get my hands on. And this has a better engine. Like, the engine in the Emira isn't bad, obviously. It's a supercharged V6, it sounds good, makes good power, but very similar power, in fact, to this. This has that high revving V8 sound that you just can't buy anymore unless you're willing to spend $150 or more $1,000 again in something like, say, a C8 Z06, but then you don't get a manual. And again, this handles fantastically. It feels way more purposeful than the C8, and compared to the Cayman, you get a lot more room in here than you do in the Cayman. The Cayman felt small because it is, and it felt cramped, whereas even though this is a smaller car than, say, like a modern 911, you get a lot of room in here. Like, it's very roomy. It's more roomy than an F-Type, and so you don't get in it and go, oh man, I feel cramped. You have plenty of room, and the sound system's good. The only thing that gives you any indication that this thing is old is the infotainment system, because there just isn't Apple CarPlay. Other than that, though, everything feels good. You get metal dials, and you get nice leather and soft touch materials everywhere, and stitching. The ride is good for being as sporty as this car is. I was cross-shopping between all these cars that I'm mentioning, and I haven't driven the Emira, but obviously I owned a C8 before I owned this car. I've driven a 718 Cayman GTS, and this feels as good as the Cayman GTS, just with better sound, in my opinion, better looks, and it's just as sporting. So you're not really missing anything other than the Porsche badge. But trust me, when you drive around in this thing, you're not thinking, man, I wish this said Porsche on it. It's such an awesome car to be in. And then again, compared to something, say, like the C8, the C8's a bit more of a GT car. Corvette is great. Obviously, straight line speed, it's fantastic. It's super comfortable, but it's softer. Whereas this is not as soft. It's comfortable, but it is not as squidgy, is the word I would use. The Corvette feels, when you hop back and forth between the two, this feels a lot more purposeful. You know, this feels like if you were to take it to a track, put the stiff suspension on, you'd get a lot more feedback in every component. Here, the steering, the brakes, the throttle, everything's more immediate. There's a sponge in certain areas. The price range for a V8 R8 is all over the place, depending on condition, mileage, transmission. Now, I will say, transmission-wise, don't go for an R-Tronic. If you're gonna buy one of these, either get the manual or the S-Tronic, the dual clutch. The R-Tronic was the automated manual, That one is not as good, a lot clunkier, not as smooth, and can be very expensive when you have to do maintenance on it. A really good, clean condition one, I'd say anywhere from $60,000 all the way up to $100,000, depending on, again, mileage, condition. So you're right in the ballpark of C8 Corvette, Cayman GTS, Lotus Emira. But you see nowhere near as many of these as you do Caymans, because again, a Cayman can go all the way down to about 60 grand. And you just don't see as many of these as you do Caymans or Corvettes. Obviously the Emira, you don't see a whole lot of those, but the benefit is you get a naturally aspirated V8 behind you, not a Toyota Camry V6. Alright, so now that we got back from our quick little drive, like I said, I mainly just wanted to point out, you know, why I think this car is just more relevant now than maybe, you know, when it first came out, super hot, then it kind of died a little bit. Then there was obviously a brief period of time where almost everybody on YouTube was buying these. And now, but I think now more than ever, these, both the V8 and the V10s are really offering what a lot of people in the enthusiast community are really asking for, right? Fantastic looking car, mid-engine, manual transmission, and they're aging so well. This is a 2011. This thing's old, and it looks fantastic. And the interior, the only thing that's dated is the center screen. Other than that, it feels fine. So yeah, like I said, guys, just wanted to kind of give you guys that information. So maybe if you are in the market for one of these and you're debating like I was between something like a Lotus Emira, C8 Corvette, or a Cayman GTS or GT4, this car is going to do what all of those cars do, but age like fine wine, and then give you a naturally aspirated, high revving V8 that the only other car even remotely close to that you can get with a decent price is the Z06, but you know, good luck getting one of those for either A, anytime soon, or B, at sticker. And like I said, one of these is fantastic. So just wanted to take you guys along with me while I drove this thing for a quick little drive and kind of give you that information, give you that comparison, because again, it was one that I made. So anyways, guys, hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to give it a like and subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next video. Take care.